And now, for your listening pleasure, here's Polizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Hello, my friends. This is Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 308 of This Old Marketing, recorded on Thursday, January 27th, 2022. And with me, as always, my good friend, my colleague, and a guy who definitely didn't get caught on a hot mic calling a Fox reporter an SOB, Mr. Joe Polizzi. How are you?
And he had to go back and apologize.
It's ridiculous.
Too.
Ridiculous.
Which, yeah, it's the whole thing is. But, you know, that's why I would never want to be a politician. You can't win.
Well, there you go. Yeah, exactly. You can't win.
Who would want to be a politician today? You know how much you have to give up?
Not me, boy. Not me. I mean, I can't even imagine how, we're in such a place now where it's literally a Kobayashi Maru. You can't win, right? You just, even looking at something that would be as, you would think unifying as, Russia and the whole, Ukraine thing, right?
Yeah.
It's so funny to watch these politicians now sort of, because this is something that generally speaking, everybody would be like, oh my gosh, this is, yes, we are unified on this. This is what we believe, blah, blah, blah. And I was watching the news shows over the weekend, and, there were the Democrats saying their thing and the Republicans saying their thing, and both of them sort of stumbling over themselves to try and not say something nice about the other, but still saying that we support the thing. It's like, it was just awkward and cringy just to watch them sort of say.
Have you ever watched the movie Vice? About
which one?
The movie Vice about Vice President Cheney, Dick Cheney.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen that movie? It runs like a documentary almost.
Yeah.
There's a portion in this, I can't remember who exactly said it, but they were talking about the fact that the way to win popularity and to bring an entire country together is to declare war against a known enemy. Then nobody cares, right? There's none of these nuances.
That's right.
Everyone's on the same page. You get 95% approval rate. And it's just interesting. It's like, that's really the only thing that brings the country together. And everything else, everybody's split on almost every issue. There's only, I don't know why that made me think of that, but it's like, you just can't win.
You can't win these days. And that's it's if you're so divided that, even showing some, openness to the other side, all it does is position you for being called weak by your side, right? And this is both left and right, by the way. You know what I mean? It's like, it's if you show a little bit of sympathy toward whatever the right view is, all of a sudden you're a traitor, and then if you show a little bit of sympathy and or openness to the left, then you're, a communist. It's like, I don't
think about it here. Think about it think about it this way, because let's bring this back to content creation and content marketing.
Yeah, please.
The more you differentiate yourself, so the more you're out on the edges, the more popular those people are. When you come together and you want to be of the people, those people don't last very long. It's very hard.
That's a great point. Yes,
it's very hard to please everyone. And I was on a podcast event this morning, and we were talking about events, and we were talking about, if you're going to be successful at an event, you have to make sure that you have a group of people that you don't please. It's a really good way to look at it. I mean, I think Ann Handley's talked about this forever when she says, in your writing, you want to make sure you know who your customer is not, or who you are not writing to.
Sure.
Because then you're writing to someone. So, I mean, it almost works the same way. So I always think about that when I do anything and say, okay, who's not going to come to this event, or who's not going to listen to this, because I want to make sure that I upset those people, or I'm not for those people, because I want to make it really, really relevant for my niche audience. So that just, I don't know why that came to mind.
Well, I think
it's very relevant.
No, it's a good point. And what works in marketing and branding, that level of differentiation is, look, and there are shades here, right? I mean, this is not a black and white issue, because there are shades of gray here when you start to think about where you're, we often talk about in our old master class and in my content marketing classes that, in order to be right for someone, you have to be willing to be wrong for someone else.
That's right.
And so, but in my view, that willingness is the key. It's not that you go out of your way to be wrong for someone else. It's that you have to be willing to stand up for what it is you believe and or take a position or a point of view on the world, not necessarily just to be controversial or just to be on one side of the scale or the other, but rather to make sure that those that might disagree, that that you're not being wishy-washy about it, right? So it's less about which side of the spectrum you fall on, and rather saying wherever you fall on the spectrum, be willing to live and die by the fact that other people won't be there. It's the willingness to be there, not necessarily like, oh, in order to be differentiated, I have to be, either I have to be either Fox or MSNBC.
Yeah, you don't have to be the shock jock.
That's right. There are points in the middle that and in fact, you could argue that differentiating these days would be actually positioning yourself right in the middle. In terms of politics, there are certain politicians that are certainly trying to do that. They're doing, I believe, a ham-fisted job of it. But there are some politicians that are actually starting to say, well, I'm gonna position myself right in the middle, right smack dab in the middle, because nobody's there. Yeah, and there's actually, interestingly, I was listening to Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway's podcast, and apparently there's a new network among all of the other networks that are being planned here for the podcasts and social networks, et cetera, that are going to get launched on the political spectrum. There is a new one getting launched that is going to position itself as being distinctly in the middle, as she said.
Isn't that what CNN tries to do, though? Even though I think a lot of people on the right side would say that they lean left, but
I think in fact, and Galloway, who's part of that new CNN subscription-based service,
that's right.
I think they're taking a more left of center position. I don't know if it's totally center. I mean, they may have a different perspective about their own brand.
I'll tell you what. I'll predict this right now. Won't be successful.
I agree.
Won't be successful. It's just too difficult to be in the middle. I would not want to be there with anything from trying to build an audience.
Yeah, right now it is for sure.
It's too challenging. Yeah. Here's an important question for you. Have you listened to the what's the song called? You Don't Talk About Bruno. Have you listened to this?
I've seen it populate my social feed, but I have not. I don't know.
So I just heard about this. I just heard about this last week, and then I was on this event today, and they were talking about it. And these are people my age talking about it. So I'm like, well, what the heck happened? So for those people that don't know,
including
You
me.
Don't Talk About Bruno is a song from the movie. I think it's called Encanto. Is that correct?
That's from that. I know.
Okay, and it is I have a man crush on Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Sure.
Absolutely love the guy, and wrote the song, and apparently it has gone super, super viral on TikTok, and now it's the number 1 or the number 2 song in all of the world or something, because something happened on TikTok and just drove it crazy. I've listened to the song. It's a nice song. It's a nice song for a Disney movie. And they're saying it's like breaking Let It Go and Frozen and those types of things. It's that big now. I just listened to it. I'm like, wow, it's not as catchy as I thought it was going to be. But I just didn't know if you listened to it or not and had it, because you're a musician and had a take on this. Well,
I've seen the movie and enjoyed the movie very much. Didn't remember. So this goes to show you, I didn't remember that song in particular. And I mean, when I saw it hit my social feed, I was like, oh yeah, that song from that movie. Yeah, I remember that. I don't, and I have listened to the song. I did not know anything about what you're talking about, this viral trend of it on TikTok. Now I'm going to go find out. I'll go look at it. Listen.
It really is amazing what TikTok has done for the music industry.
Oh my gosh.
Because it's incredible. If you get your song, like Lil Nas X, he's done a great job of this, and I don't know if he does it or he has people working on it, but you get people that will do a dance or do something to a particular song, and it just blows up.
Well, and the other one is stand-up comics.
Yeah,
I mean, all of the, and maybe this is my algorithm at work here on TikTok, but what I see is a lot of people doing the bits of stand-up comics. And and they're lip syncing to it, obviously. But those, it's like, oh wow, that's fascinating to me that this is where we are now, right? Where and for whatever reason, it's usually women as opposed to men. Don't know why. And women doing men comics, again, don't know why. But they're funny bits because they're stand-up comic bits. But it's just fascinating to me that this has become sort of the way that we experience stand-up comedy now, especially on TikTok. It's just fascinating.
Well, we'll talk about this a little bit, but that's the value from a content creation standpoint. The value of these networks is marketing.
Of course,
it's not to monetize. It's content marketing, right? It's not to monetize directly. It's to build those audiences on those platforms, and then they go get your stuff and they go buy your thing.
Exactly.
So,
yes.
Anyways.
That's right.
What do we got? We got a show planned today?
We do have a show planned. We've got a wonderful show planned. And see what we did there? We didn't even talk about football, and it's the National Conference Championships this weekend, and we didn't even talk about that. Nor did we talk about the fact that the last weekend was the most amazing NFL weekend probably in the history of the NFL, with the 4 games, really all of them coming down to a last-second play. It's we didn't talk about that.
The fix is in.
The fix is in. The fix is in. Says the Browns.
Because our Cowboys and Browns aren't in. I don't want to talk about it. No, you're right. And I feel very sorry for Bills fans.
Yeah, they were.
Because they deserve to win.
That's correct.
But congratulations to we have a lot of fans, listeners in Kansas City. Congratulations to you,
Kansas City,
and then our friends, my friends in Ohio and Cincinnati. I'm very happy, even though I want most of my AFC North divisional rivals to suffer great pain. I am happy that Cincinnati has made it back after a long drought. So good for them.
I'm hoping for a Bengals Rams. So we'll have some fun with that.
I would take that. I'm a Stafford homer right now. Just the quarterback.
Oh, Stafford for sure. Yeah, Stafford. That's why I want a Rams Super Bowls, only because for Stafford, because I don't think he's got many years left in him, but I think he's fantastic. He's such a great quarterback.
But we talked about this on the last episode. I like Odell Beckham Jr.
Oh, I know.
But what the heck?
I know.
He catches everything in LA. He couldn't catch a cold in Cleveland.
Yeah.
I mean, what? It was bad. You and I remember I was at that game. I think it was the Denver game or something like that. It's a Thursday night game. You were watching it on television, and you texted me and said, OBJ is making your team worse, or whatever you texted me, because he dropped 3 balls in a row. He's catching everything in LA. Like,
I know.
What the heck?
It's like my old friend. I had
CryptoPunk, so I do like him for that. So whatever.
Yeah, my old my good friend Mike Weiss used to say something that I loved, that I have used a lot in the past, which is I'd rather make a 0 on a test than a 55, because a 55 means I tried. And that's kind of Odell, right? It's like, he was going to score 0 in Cleveland because anything else would have meant he would be seen as trying. Anyway, all right, we've got a great show.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We've got a great show lined up here. We're going to talk a little bit about Neil Young and how he won't keep rocking on Spotify's world. And we're going to talk about influencers or creators or crefluencers or inflationists or whatever the hell they're called these days. Everybody from McDonald's to Trump to all of marketing looking at these folks, even as some get banned. We'll talk a little bit about Tom Brady's new company. Even though the dreamy quarterback is not in this year's Super Bowl, he's still got 170 million reasons to be happy. And if there's time, we'll talk a little bit about Instagram's new program of launching a subscription service. Does it matter? Is it different? Do we care? We don't know. Let's find out. I'm going to rant a little bit about Google and saying, get the flock out of here and their targeted advertising. And Joe's going to talk about Andy Weir's new book, Hail Mary. And I'm throwing out a big bet that he liked it. So there you go. That's our show.
Absolutely. I love these. Yeah. I wonder if people appreciate your little overviews now. I certainly
hope
do.
So. Yeah,
I do. It
so.
helps me because as everyone knows, I don't really prepare for this show. So the fact that you go through what we're going to talk about is very helpful for me as a co-host.
Well, there you go. That's all I'm here to do, buddy, is serve you. As long as I'm serving you, then it's all good. Let's move on to our first story here. And, of course, it is from our friends at Spotify. And this coming courtesy of the Wall Street Journal, where we'll link in the show notes. Of course, Spotify actually takes down Neil Young's music after his Joe Rogan ultimatum. The article opens up by saying Spotify has removed Neil Young's music, the company confirmed Wednesday, as the folk rock star isn't wavering in his objection to Joe Rogan's podcast. The Heart of Gold and Harvest Moon singer earlier this week penned an open letter to his manager and label from the service saying, we're spreading fake information around COVID-19 vaccines, though Mr. Rogan's show, they have Rogan or Young, not both, he wrote. And they basically, Spotify made a statement saying, we regret Neil's decision to remove his music from Spotify, but hope to welcome him back soon. And they did it. They took it down. So what say you, Mr. Man, about all of this and your take on a content creator Neil Young and Spotify?
Yes.
Does anybody care?
Yeah, I'm gonna put this question out there. Do you think that anyone in Spotify cared about this?
No, I think people walked around Spotify hallways or virtual hallways these days and basically said, "Who's this old man and what did he do? Who is
that? Yeah, what's going on there?" So first of all, just a couple things about. This is not a big deal for Neil Young to do. I actually commend any creator. Exactly. Commend any creator for taking a stand of anything that they believe. I'm behind what Neil Young did. But you got to remember, this is not a lot of money to Neil Young. This is marketing for Neil Young. Just what we were talking about before. It's the same thing. It's a great chance so people can listen. Like, hey, what's that? Oh, that's Neil Young. Oh, that's great. I want to go. I mean, I loved Neil Young as part of Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. That's how I first got introduced to Neil Young. So I'm totally into that. But again, only marketing and not a lot of money, especially when it's split up between 4 or 5 different ways. What does Neil Young get? A couple dollars at the end of the day. But for Spotify, who's got $100 million plus into Joe Rogan, that's like Sirius XM.
Exactly.
Remember when Sirius XM or Sirius, I think at the time, signed Howard Stern?
Right.
And there were all kinds of people that said, there's other creators on Sirius's platform. They're going to leave, whatever. Sirius XM said, I don't care. You can all leave because we're putting everything behind the Howard Stern bus. And you know what? It worked pretty darn well for them. And Spotify's doing the same thing with Joe Rogan. And again, not a middle player. On the outskirts, those are the ones that get people listening. And you get that loyalty. So like it or not, what are you going to do? Neil Young is off of Spotify. There you go.
Yeah.
And Garth, by the way,
decision...
Garth Brooks has never been on Apple. So,
right.
Whatever. What do you think?
The Beatles weren't on Apple for a long time.
For a long time.
It's interesting that, this decision at Spotify, I imagine, took about 0.000009 seconds to make. It's like this was not even a decision, about, this is really interesting, or should we make this decision? And they went, okay, fine, bye, see you later. And by the way, they make that decision fine. And Neil Young, I have to imagine, never, ever, ever, ever expected them to make any other decision. Like this was for him. I mean, look, the cynical might say this is a marketing ploy by him to get some publicity for his song catalog so that interest in Neil Young's music actually emerges. I don't think it is. I think this is Neil being Neil. And I think he's earnest in his move. So really it becomes good for both of them, right? Good.
But I think as a content creator, you have your decision.
Yeah, of course.
About which platforms you want to distribute on.
Right.
So you could say, I don't want to be on Facebook anymore. I don't want to be on Twitter. You could absolutely do all those
Absolutely,
things.
yes.
Great.
Exactly.
You don't have, if you're a podcaster, you don't have to publish to Spotify or Apple or anything. You could publish just your own website or your own app.
Yeah.
So this is the great thing about content creators. So good for Neil Young. And by the way, Rogan made the decision to take off. So I used to listen to him a long time ago on Apple through the Stitcher app. And now I can't do that anymore.
Right.
So whatever. But choices on all ends, which I think there's nothing wrong with choice. I don't like misinformation, but I like the fact that there's more choice for everyone.
Well, and that gets us to, something else we can link into the show notes because a sort of corollary, not directly related to this story, but certainly a story that's hitting and breaking news even as we record this is yet again, and this time it's YouTube, is basically kicking someone off the platform for their controversial views, right? So for their views about a particular, so it's working both ways, right? So there's sort of like creators leaving platforms based on the actions of the platform, and then there are platforms that are kicking off creators based on the actions of the creator. This time, and what we'll link to is a Yahoo actual article where YouTube, the Fox News host.
This is funny how you said that. An actual article from
Yahoo. It's
Go
anyway,
ahead. Nothing
not
more
going to
needs
rant
to be
on.
said. Go ahead.
Yeah. The Fox News host Dan Bongino, who I don't know from anyone, basically has been banned from YouTube for apparently evading suspension. The article says Fox News host Dan Bongino is no longer welcome on YouTube, said the company. Bongino is now permanently banned from its video platform after he attempted to evade a prior suspension related to COVID-19 misinformation. The conservative commentator apparently published a video on his main channel while another channel was suspended, thereby violating YouTube's terms of service. I'm not really sure how that works, right? If you've got two channels and one of them gets suspended and the other one didn't, can't you then publish on your secondary anyway? I don't
exactly.
Really
I didn't get that either.
Understand all that.
I think he's got a business. He's got like the podcast business channel and then his personal channel. I think is the way.
So basically, it's a little bit like how when Trump got banned from Twitter, they banned his personal account, but the POTUS account stayed okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I guess that's a similar type of thing here, but this is even a little different than that. Anyway, it sort of relates to what you were just talking about, right? Because the weirdness here is that both creators, marketers, communicators, brands are available to say no to the platforms, but the platforms are increasingly saying no to the brands. It's a fascinating time, right? To be sort of sorting all this out where we sort of sit in the spectrum.
It's crazy. I don't think, for example, when Facebook or YouTube started, I don't think they ever thought that they would be media arbitrators, to decide this content stays, this content goes. But this is clearly where we're at, and I don't even know how it's going to shake out.
Well, they fought for this in Congress. The whole being able to be a platform thing where they didn't have to do that, right? That was the whole thing of the 1996 act, where that started to say these things were platforms, not media
different
companies.
time then. Yeah, it was definitely a different
course.
time. I don't think anybody knew that what they were voting on at that time, it would become this. because
Right.
the platforms have way too much power. And oh, geez, it's not that I disagree. It's like I'm not a Bongino fan, so it's hard for me. I'm like, great, I don't want any misinformation out either. But I think everyone has a right. If YouTube's an open platform, then you should be able to communicate. So I'm torn. I don't even know what the right decision. I mean, you can't go and I don't know what kind of misinformation. I don't even know if it is or not. But let's just say it was.
Doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter.
That's right. YouTube is making a decision that they don't like this content, and you're done.
That's right.
And Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and every other platform can make that decision, and we're beholden to it as creators. And there's nothing we can do about it.
That's right. That's right. And
So-
and it goes both ways, right? It goes both ways to the creator, right? Because, and what we've seen with Neil Young is saying, "Hey, listen, I don't want to be on this. I don't want to be on your platform anymore." Now, the interesting thing to me is when you start to think about that for a minute, like you look at YouTube versus Spotify, right? And the differences in there. Because Spotify is 100, well, not 100%, but largely, let's say, 95% of its content is, curated. Let's say, in other words, you're not putting up just anything you want on Spotify, right? You're not putting up, I can't upload a copy of Neil Young's Harvest Moon up to Spotify and expect to get monetized on it, unlike a YouTube where I can do exactly that.
Yeah.
Right. And so for a while until I get caught and yada, yada. So the interesting thing is that, for example, Neil Young, if let's say YouTube did something like this, and YouTube obviously does have this Dan Bongino guy, which is espousing similar ideas that Joe Rogan is putting out there. Neil Young can't say, "I don't want my stuff on YouTube anymore." That's just not going to fly. He can say that, but it ain't going to happen. His stuff will still be available. Like you can go today and search for Neil Young songs all over YouTube and find them.
Yeah, so it is a little bit different. You're right. You'd find it, and because 1,000 people have uploaded them.
Exactly.
It's like you can't manage that kind of user generated content.
That's right. Even Prince tried to do that, right? So back in the day, Prince tried to say, "I don't want any of my stuff on YouTube," and tried to get it all taken off, and it just doesn't work, right? It's that's the internet. And so you start to ask hard questions like, what's the difference between Spotify and YouTube when it comes to becoming a media company? And, and then it starts to bleed into Facebook and Instagram and, everything where there's user-generated content. Because, by the way, Spotify has user-generated content, too.
Yeah.
You can put up your own original music and your own albums and monetize them and do all the things that you want to do to an extent. But, where are those lines to be drawn? And how do you draw those lines? And I think, honestly, my take is that they are going to need to be drawn. You think
regulations need to happen?
Some kind of regulations. Some of the things that I've heard are akin to some of the things that that they held. Some of the environmental laws. It's where big chemical companies and those kinds of companies were held liable for some of the actions that they took to the environment, and it just basically, so it was more cost effective for them to take preventative measures than it was to actually pay the fines. And I think that those kinds of regulatory types of things could be coming, right? For mental health, for factual information, for those kinds of things, to say, yeah, you can put whatever you want up, and you can make those decisions yourself, but you're going to be liable for what happens after that, right? So whether that's, I just think that's going to be, there has to be something that starts to put our arms around this, because otherwise we're going to, it doesn't go anywhere good. Let's put it that way.
It's probably, I think you're probably right. And if you look at any major media company right now, they've got an editorial review, multiple people in charge of editorial review, fact checking.
Right. Yep.
What the difference is between, so let's say the New York Times,
and they're held to a standard, right? There's a standard to be held to.
Okay,
yeah.
We can't publish this right now. We have to have somebody review it and make sure it's right. That doesn't happen right now for the most part on Facebook and YouTube and whatever. I can publish something on YouTube, and as soon as it's uploaded, in 30 seconds it'll render and it's up.
That's right.
That's going to have to stop this. We need instantaneous content, and it'll probably be artificial intelligence. I don't know how that's going to work, but it's going to have to review all this content. That's where you're going to get to. You're going to miss out on a few seconds of I need it instantly or I need to get it up right now to say we need to have review. And I'll give you an example. I was playing with Twitter's review newsletter service, trying to figure out what they're doing. And it's interesting. If you upload a list to Twitter review, they want some information and they want to review that list and make sure that that list is a proper list, that you have opt-in permission. I don't mind that. I don't mind that I can't send my newsletter out right now because Twitter Review's team wants to look at that list to make sure I don't spam somebody.
Right.
I think that kind of thing has to happen with these social media platforms.
Yep.
How and on what scale, I have no idea, because it's going to be unbelievably large undertaking, but it has to happen.
It will happen. It will have to happen. Is exactly right. And I think you're going to start to see, speaking of differentiation on the spectrum, I think you're going to start to see Twitter might be an example of this, where you start moving into, because one social network we never talk about with this kind of issue is LinkedIn, right? And the reason is because there's such an identity process to go through to, as you get on LinkedIn, right? So, you can't really be anonymous on LinkedIn. I mean, you can be if you really try, but it's sort of, it's counterproductive, right? Whereas on Twitter or Facebook, you just launch a thing and you start go. And so it'll be interesting to see if some of this starts to, I could see, for example, Twitter becoming a subscription service, right? Where identity becomes important. And once identity becomes important, that changes the whole tenor of the conversation.
That's actually very, very true. I think that, it's interesting. It's like, let's say, for example, you want to buy crypto today. You actually have to give a lot of information. You have to give your social.
Absolutely,
you have to be an actual person. You can't just go and buy and put it on some account. I think the same thing. You're right. There's multiple changes that can happen. That's another one. I need to be a known person with something that's verifiable, that a platform can say, okay, well, you are now responsible for the content that you upload.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
So we're making all the changes. We've got all the answers here.
They just need to come to This Old Marketing, and we can solve the world's problem. If they only knew. If they only knew about us. All right, let's move on to our next story here so that we can get through all this wonderful stuff. And the next thing we're going to talk a little bit about is influencers or creators or whatever the heck they're called. We're going to group a bunch of links together here for you folks. And the first one is coming from podnews.net. And thanks to friend and family of the show, Ian Truscott, for passing this along. And it basically is... Loving it is the headline. McDonald's signs podcast deal with a former employee. A former McDonald's drive-through cashier has signed a multi-year, multi-million-dollar podcast deal with his former employer, Gary Quashi or Quashi. I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name. The CEO of Pod Digital Media has partnered with McDonald's USA to help them reach a multicultural audience. So there's the first. The second will be about our former President Trump and his new social network, who is behind the scenes quietly courting a bunch of new influencers. This coming from Axios, which basically says President Trump's elusive new social media network, Truth Social, which plans to go public, is reaching out to internet influencers asking them to reserve their spots when it launches in February or March. Why does it matter? Well, because the outreach doesn't actually mention Trump's name or any affiliation to that. Some influencers suggest that it could be a ploy to enlist their support without realizing that affiliation. And the last one we'll link to is a Forbes article which talks about the growth of the creator economy and what does it mean for influencers, and pick that a little bit because it has both words in it. The global influencer marketing market size has more than doubled since 2019. The market was valued at a record $13.8 billion. It seems impossible to open the marketing trades or scroll through LinkedIn without seeing an endless barrage of articles on influencer marketing and the creator economy. So how do we explain this sudden explosive growth, asks the article. The battle for consumer attention, solving two of marketing's greatest challenges, content keeping up with pace of culture, and personalizing content are some of the reasons they point out. But when we take all these things together, Mr. Polizzi, what do you say about marketers, influencers, creator economy, all of that?
Well, we can come back to some of the individual stories because I do have a take on it, but just to put some perspective on it, I had a conversation with a fintech company 2 days ago, and they target influencers for payment. So if an influencer does a brand deal, they have an app, and they can use that app to get that payment. And I was talking about this person was talking about influencers, and I was talking about content creators. Two very different things. His idea of an influencer is somebody on Instagram that basically only generates revenue through brand deals, not necessarily full-time, but could be, but definitely leveraging a social media platform. And so that's that idea of influencer. And I'm telling him about content creators, and I'm saying, content creators, they want to build an audience, to build enough of an audience so they can monetize in many ways. These are bloggers and podcasters and writers and YouTubers, and could be on Instagram and all sorts of things, but they monetize many different ways. And we were like, it was amazing how we were talking past each other, so are some content creators influencers? Yeah, I'm sure there are influencers, content creators. Well, yes, maybe, but maybe not our idea of being part of the creator economy. So it's interesting when you read these articles. We really don't know where they're coming from, because most of the time, I don't know what you think, Robert, but when I read most of these articles about the creator economy, they are very specifically talking about influencers. It seems to be.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
The Kardashian type influencer.
Right.
And I'm going this is a pitch, and I'm going to promote this purse, or I'm going to promote, this line of whatever, sports equipment, whatever you do. And that's how I'm making revenue from it. So it's getting really, really confusing out there, even from a messaging standpoint.
Sure. Well, even, just the terminology itself. I mean, to me, I think you differentiate it very well when you launched Tilt, right? Which is that, and given, everything else that could have happened, it should have been the, content entrepreneur, economy, right? Instead of the content creator economy, because you can argue that all influencers are content creators, but not all content creators want to be influencers, right? So the idea of a content entrepreneur, which is someone who wants to build their own little small media company that may be monetized through subscriptions and not advertising, has no interest in being an influencer in any particular space. However, you can also argue that the ones that do are, right? So I think it all comes down to what does the person, the creator in this particular case, how are they going to monetize what it is they do? And some will do it through influencer marketing. Will do it through being sponsored by and or supported through benefactors who will who in return will get their quote unquote access to their audience. That's all it really is. Let's let's be honest. That's CNN is an influencer marketing platform. So is the Wall Street Journal. So is the New York Times. So is Vogue. So is any publication that accepts advertising. That's the entire. This is nothing new, folks, right? This is advertising is influencer marketing. It is simply putting your message into a place that influences the opinion of an audience, and hopefully you get some of the benefit of being in that halo, and people go, oh, they're in Vogue. Oh, they're in the New York Times. Oh, they're in there. They must be good, right? And so at the end of the day, it's nothing in the world has really changed except the level at which we operate. And so these there's this old saying here in Hollywood, do you want to be a star or do you want to be an actor? And a lot of people, the Kardashians included, want to be stars, right? They want to be famous. They want to be known for who they are. But then there are people who don't give a crap about being famous. They want to be rich and or they want to be artists, and they become actors, and be damned if they actually become stars. But there's obviously an overlap in that Venn diagram of people who are great actors who are also stars. And so it's really just ultimately down to how you make your money. What I find fascinating here is how brands are starting to now think about creating the stars, right? So the McDonald's thing in particular is fascinating to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've got now people going, oh, you're, now it's, it used to be, the movie studios who would walk around to the drugstore counters and spot the new, who's going to be the new star of whatever, movie. Well, now it's the brands actually walking around going, you look great. We can mold you. We can build you. We can actually put our money behind you and build you as a star and an influencer. And that will be a very interesting thing to watch as time goes on.
It's not all that different a departure from when Microsoft started Channel 9 20 years ago. And they said, we there's all this great engineering talent in Microsoft, and somebody just took a camera around and started interviewing the engineers. That's what it was. It's just, and they go back to Indian blogs and Indian manufacturers industrial soldering equipment back in 2005, 2006. They said, we got these great engineers and we should get them on the blogs. And so basically they made quote unquote stars out of them because they took their content and put it on the internet. And now you're just getting to more video, more personal. But here's the question.
You're just widening that circle. Yeah, you're widening that circle out, right? You're no longer looking at your executive. This is something B2B companies have done forever. Is how do we get our quote unquote subject matter experts or our thought leaders and turn them into the personality of the company, right? Let them become the face of our organization. Many times it's the CEO. Many times it's and you get so you end up with sort of the Steve Jobs or the back in the day, I'm forgetting her name, the CEO of HP, who then ran for office. Can't remember her name off the top of my head. But anyway,
not eBay, right? Not.
No. But you get the Elon Musk as well, right? So you get these sort of superstar executives who you turn into sort of cultural heroes, if you will, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, all those kinds of things, and this has been around forever. And now what we're doing is widening out the circle to say, what, we can actually get some of our customers and or employees and or partners, and we can turn them into stars for us as well, and they'll become influencers to our brand or our product or our service. Yeah,
remember when Twitter just came out, and I think both Dell and IBM really worked hard on helping their employees. IBM, I can think of specifically, getting them set up on Twitter, making sure they knew how to use it, making sure it's set up with their blog properly, all that kind of stuff, so they can position themselves as experts. And they actually did training, formal training on this. And I think that's, you could, there's a lot of companies that do that today as well. You can make a decision too. You could say part of our content marketing strategy is to have this influence where we're building influencers and partnering with other influencers. And you might say, I'm just only going to go and tell my own stories from a corporate perspective. I'm going to do both, or I'm just going to focus on creating these influencers and having them tell our stories.
Yeah, that's right.
You can make a decision to do that today.
Yeah, it's all part of your portfolio, right? It's all part of your new marketing mix. And I just think what I think is so fascinating about all of this is how, there's this jockeying for position, to your point, what you were talking about earlier, which is there's this jockeying for position underneath where, you're starting to see some of the same tension that grew up certainly in the advertising model and journalism way back in the day, and really forever, versus the actor versus star debate, back in the day, and all of these things that are sort of older tensions that have existed now are starting to exist at the creator level, which is, well, how are you monetizing? You know what I mean? How are you actually going about your business? Are you trying to be an influencer And then the influencer's like, what, don't you dare look down your nose at me. I want to be an influencer. I want to do that. And then the influencers are looking down their nose and saying, what, do you want to be a creator, and live on pennies for the rest of your life? There's this fascinating tension that's growing at that level that is interesting to watch.
It's going to be it's going to get really crazy with this whole thing. Just a couple side notes before we move on with the Trump social thing. I think that's going to be. I'm not a believer that that's going to work because there's so like Parler and a couple other. There's so much. I don't know what's going to differentiate a truth social network outside of Donald Trump's involvement.
Yeah. Well, I think the problem is that there's no tension there. There's no, the problem with the story is there's no villain. What are you going to do if you've got a bunch of people who all agree with each other, violently agree with each other on a social network? Where's the tension? You have to have.
Which is why Facebook works so well. You're right.
Exactly,
you had both
right?
sides. That's interesting.
Got the arguments.
Do you think that's why something like a Parler hasn't taken off like it should, because everyone's basically singing the same tune?
Yeah, it's all basically it's the choir coming together and going, yay! There's no audience. Right? There's zero audience for that. Everybody's a player, and when there's nobody in the audience that's going to disagree with you, or put up a noise, or all those kinds of things, it literally just becomes this inside baseball sort of discussion where everybody's like, yeah, we all agree. All right, well, let's move on about our lives. The way that you get notoriety as one of those creators is that you create the tension. It's why so many times we see these outrageous comments. Look, this is the reason Joe Rogan doesn't create all this content because he's trying to help the planet. Joe Rogan creates all this content because he knows that it's controversial, and it's what gets him views, and it's what keeps his audience coming back every week. It's the people who, there's that great scene in Howard Stern's movie. We've talked about this before, where they come in with the research and they go, new ratings are in. Yeah, the new ratings are in, and they go, great, what is it? And it's like, people who love Howard Stern, it's like, yes, well, it's up 10%. And it's like, what, the number one reason? I want to see what he's going to say next. And then they go, the people who hate Howard Stern, and they're like, yeah. And they're like, that's up 50%. And it's like, what do you mean? It's like, yes, the number one reason, they want to see what he's going to say next.
And they listened longer. Yeah, I remember.
Right,
they listened way longer to him to see what he's going to say next.
That's the key is that you've got to have people who hate watch to create that villain, that tension that creates the audience. That this is why some of the social media platforms are so toxic right now, is because that's all it is. It's about tension. You've got to create tension. That's what creates viewership.
But I got to tell you, it can work by everybody singing the same tune. It worked for Jim Jones. It's like, you can create a cult. You could actually.
Oh dear! Wow.
That's terrible, isn't it? But it's
Jim
true.
Jones has entered the chat. Oh,
you could just create a cult. And there are a number of cults out there that work fairly well.
You could. That is correct. That is what they call a niche audience. Yes.
That is a niche audience. Absolutely. So
yes, you can monetize a niche audience. You absolutely can. Yeah, absolutely.
I can't wait to get the emails this week and let's say, Joe, really? Jim Jones? Grape juice or whatever? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a Nike joke there too. I think that. Yeah.
All right, moving on.
Oh man. All right, moving on very quickly here because we need to get to our rants and raves very quickly. But just quickly here, Tom Brady, the dreamy, wonderful quarterback who's no longer in contention for a Super Bowl, basically has 170 million reasons to be happy. His new NFT startup raised $170 million. The new startup, and this comes to us courtesy of Axios Autograph, announced it's raised $170 million. If the dollar amount isn't enough, says Axios, it seems as if every NFT startup is raising money right now. The company is, of course, co-founded by Tom Brady. So just quickly, I guess, a quick take, if you will. What do you think? Is this worth thinking about, or do we care, or is this like going to change the world, and all this kind of stuff?
I don't
it's pretty,
know.
pretty minimal when it comes to the rest of the other companies that are out there. But it is Tom Brady.
I would put this in perspective. Absolutely could be a success, but this feels really, really similar to 2000 and 2001. You had a lot of money available for .coms, internetpets.com, right? You remember the whole thing.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. I built some of those companies.
Absolutely. Actually, you know what? Remember the 2001, I think it was the 2001 Super Bowl. You had the pets.com ad. You had the toys.com ad or something like that, a couple other .coms. And then those companies all went away in the next 12 to 18 months. You have, not that this is going to happen in crypto, but you've got some, I think it's 2 or 3 major companies, crypto companies, that are sponsoring the Super Bowl this year, and they're buying it. So you can almost see that history is repeating itself. Now, there were a lot of amazing companies that launched during that time. So I'm not saying it's not going to work, but a lot of them are going away. There's just money everywhere for these crypto startups right now, and I guess if you can take it, that's great. Good for them. But I guess I would just say, I don't know if we're in a bubble right now, but this is just like every other industry that we've seen before, and we can learn some things, what happened in the past. That's why history is a great teacher. So that's how I'm looking at it through that 2000. Well,
it's so funny. You took the words right out of my mouth, because back in 2000 and 2001, I worked for a big website design company called US Web back in the day. And we worked on, and here in LA, it was many of those media and entertainment startups that we worked on. There was stamps.com. I don't even remember that. What it was going to be allow you to buy postage stamps online. That was revolutionary back in the day, if you can believe that. And then there was another one. We worked on mp3.com, which was going to be, hey, there's this new thing. You can download MP3s from a website. Woo! That won't be commoditized too quickly. And then there was, of course, all of these celebrity startups. They all had one. Every celebrity had sort of their own startup about whether it was going to be streaming media or whether it was going to be, this thing or that thing. And you had all this money just flowing into these companies, to the extent that US Web in the day had its own venture arm, right? Where, and this is fascinating to me back in the day, because it's actually coming back now, this kind of model where you would trade professional services for stock in the company. In other words, we would take on a project for a new startup company, look at their business plan. This was my job, by the way, back in the day, was I would read the business plan of the startup, this new .com startup, and I would make a judgment about how many hours we would actually give them in terms of professional services to launch their new website, and we would take stock in the company as, and that worked out about as well as you thought it might.
Didn't you tell me you read toys.com and you said, sock puppet, this is going to work great.
Yeah, it was toys.com. Well, toys.com actually turned into a nice acquisition for somebody. I can't remember who. But it was pets.com. Yeah, I read that business plan.
Which one was the sock puppet? Was it pets.com or eToys or what?
Pets.com. Pets.com. Okay. Yeah.
Pets.com.
eToys actually was another spectacular failure because it got bought by Toys R Us. And then, of course, Toys R Us went, it went sideways as well. So, yeah, so many greats. If we could share cocktails and do a whole show just on the disasters coming out of .com, but
people probably
but
would
now
like
it's time
that.
for rants and raves.
Yeah, I think put that on a side note. Let's talk about past media and marketing disasters.
Oh,
we'll just do a special
that'd be a fun show.
I got a whole bunch.
That would be a fun show.
Yeah, you got more though.
Exactly.
You're a little bit older now.
I got a lot of the .com startups for sure. For sure I do. All right, well, folks, quickly, it is time for our rants and rave section. When Joe and I go off on a little bit of a rant or a little bit of a rave over something that makes us feel like we're on a hot mic and we get called an SOB, or, other way around. And so, let's see. Do you want to go first, or shall I go first?
Yeah, let me do mine. Mine is just really quick because I want to get to yours because I think yours is more interesting. But as you know, you sort of know the history. When I was at Content Marketing Institute, we had an event. I think the first year we did the event, it was called Content Tech. It used to be Intelligent Content Conference. And that first year, we really wanted to kick it off well. And we said, The Martian, the movie, just came out. It was hot with Matt Damon. And we said, let's go get Andy Weir who's the author. And you remember, it turned out great, right? He was just such a great guy.
It was fantastic.
Everyone learned from him. It was a fantastic closing keynote. I mean, I think it was in Las Vegas that year, I believe, or I think it was San Francisco or Vegas, whatever. And we're like, oh, this is great. And I read the book, and the book was fantastic. The movie was good. I still do like the movie. Whenever it comes on, I still like to watch it. But the book is fascinating and fantastic, and I just fell in love with it. I would say it's probably one of my top 20 books that I enjoy reading. I did not realize that he came out with another book. He came out with an audio book only, which I really liked, which was read. It was read by Rosario Dawson, who's fantastic at audiobooks. But I didn't know he came out with a new book until Mark Maxheimer, who Mark runs education at the Tilt. He said, Joe, did you know Andy Weir had a new book out? I said, no, I had no idea. It's called Project Hail Mary. And I don't know how you are with books, but generally it takes me a while to get into a book. Well, this one, by the first 2 pages, I was hooked. I'm in, and I read and I'm not a quick reader. I read the whole thing and just downed it in a couple days. It was fantastic. So if you like science fiction, I love he does I don't want to give anything away, but he does a time perspective. He goes back and forth from past to present. And sometimes I don't like the way those work, especially in mystery novels, but this worked out really, really well. So I just wanted to make a recommendation. I'm not getting paid for this at all. This is no referral fee. I'm just saying, Project Hail Mary, Andy Weir. If you like science fiction, and if you're a writer, you will appreciate his writing style. And the one thing I just wanted to mention, I thought was interesting because he made this purposeful. In The Martian, there was a lot of he threw a lot of F-bombs out. It was not a rated G book, if you will. Project Hail Mary, the main character is an 8th grade science teacher, and he made specific. He tried very hard. There's not one curse word in the entire book. Even when there could be, the 8th grade teacher says something in replacement of that so that it's more of like, flop you or whatever he says. Like it's
right.
It makes, so I just thought that was interesting that he made the decision this time to go a little bit broader and make sure that he could have this be a kid's, like teenagers would love this book as well. So there you go.
Broaden that audience. Yeah. Fantastic.
Interesting.
Yeah. No, it's on my reading list. To get to, because I love the whole concept of it, which I read about. I love that concept, and I didn't read too much into it because I didn't want to be spoiled or anything. But it looks like a fantastic book. All right.
So, let's see. I want to get to yours. What do you got?
Well, so here it is. I won't spend too much time on it, but it's a bit of a continuation of last week's discussion on surveillance-based advertising and tracking, and it does feed into everything we were talking about on this show. So if you didn't see it, the news is that Google has proposed a new way. So on this show, we've talked about this idea called FLoC, which, is just the worst name and acronym ever for something like this. And you get it, you flock together. It's about, anyway, I won't go down that road, but that's not the rant, by the way. But basically what FLoC was a alternative to third-party cookies that they've been trying to figure out with the IAB and so many other different industry associations, the ANA and all these folks, and sort of getting advertisers to not track users across the internet and develop personally identifiable information. And how do you do that? And this FLoC idea was basically going to be a sort of a browser extension, if you will, almost, that basically allowed the collection of this data, but then didn't, kept it proprietary and all of that. And of course, marketers, industry associations, privacy advocates, they all threw up in their mouth a little bit about all that stuff and said, no, this isn't working. And they couldn't make it work and all of that. So now they've got a new idea, which is actually better. They call it Topics, which is going to basically be centering everything around content. In other words, they're going to center everything around looking at content and then applying topics to your history so that when you do targeted advertising, you're basically seeing it targeted to whatever content you've been consuming rather than your personally identifiable information. At its surface, and there's lots of detail to explore here, this seems pretty good to me. I feel like it's pretty good. What I wanted to, so that's the first thing, and of course we'll link to that in the show notes. But what I wanted to rant about a little bit was a discussion that's going on right now. This courtesy of Media Post, which the headline is "The ad industry and privacy advocates are sparring over surveillance advertising," because as we talked about last week, there's this new bill that's coming through Congress that's getting sort of written, rewritten, proposed and all that sort of stuff. There's Google's Flock. And then, of course, there's everybody from the Federal Trade Commission sort of getting into the fight here. And the ANA, the Association of National Advertisers, has weighed in. And so this article that we'll link to is basically talking about what the arguments of both sides are. And it's just the rant I have is that I can't understand, if you're going to continue to argue for surveillance style advertising in today's day and age, you've got to come up with a better argument than consumers want it. And it just, that's just not true.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just flat out untrue, and you can show me study after study that shows that consumers prefer, more relevant advertising than irrelevant advertising. That does not mean that they want their data used in order to provide that relevance. It just means that they want advertising to be better. They don't necessarily want their data to be used to make that advertising better. And so the argument that the ANA has put out, and this is a quote, is basically says, consumers receive virtually free access to massive amounts of information online, in large part due to the ad-subsidized internet, the ANA wrote in a 14-page filing. So they took 14 pages to make this argument. Additionally, thanks to data-driven advertising, consumers are presented with advertisements and messaging that is tailored to them, thereby benefiting consumers by giving them information that is useful and maximizing efficiency in businesses' interactions with their existing and prospective customers. That is the most bullshit line I have heard in a long time. And I can buy, there are a couple of arguments that I buy around utilizing personal data to provide better experiences, but it all, of course, depends on the better angels of brands to actually use that data in a better way, i.e. content marketing. So I have come down, as any frequent listener to this show will, is the idea that we don't need it. There's plenty of research out there. Dr. Fu, by the way, who's a fantastic researcher in this space, talks a lot about how actually just general brand advertising and generally presented advertising actually does perform better than programmatic or targeted ads, but that's a whole different argument. But otherwise, I just think that if we're really going to lean into this being valuable to consumers as marketers, as advertisers in today's world, and actually deliver things that people value and people want, and actually get into this idea of content and actually do provide personal experiences, it's yet another argument for first-party data. But arguments like this don't help our industry. It doesn't help our industry appear to be trying to be helpful. It doesn't make our industry look like we care. All it does is make us look like we're trying to continue. And the thing that it reminds me of so much, speaking of 1996 and Web 1.0, is sort of, it's the same argument that the phone companies, and what we'll link to in the show notes, and is a 1996 article that basically speaks to the idea of all of this newfangled technology called the internet. And basically, it's this link to this article that talks about, the headline is, Telephone Industry Moves to Ban Internet Phone Software. So imagine this article appearing today, right? Where, and this is a quote from the article, America's Carriers Telecommunications Association, the ACTA, which is, of course, the association for a trade group representing small and long-distance companies. This is in 1996. Well, they positioned the Federal Communications, the FCC, to stop software firms from selling programs that create a voice pipeline between two companies on the internet. Can you imagine, Joe? These programs, these newfangled programs, let their users talk to anyone on the internet without paying a long distance fee. Absolutely crazy. They can actually, for the cost of a local call, both parties can even use video to actually speak to each other over this new thing called the internet. At the moment, only 20,000 to 50,000 people worldwide are using this new technology, and none of the competing software packages sold by companies, and they name a few companies here. But Mark Andreessen, Netscape Corporation's technology guru said his Mountain View-based company will make a computer-to-computer voice capability a standard feature in their new Netscape browser. Blah, 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 blah. This is right where we are. We're right back in 1996 again. So that's what I just think we need to think about, what is beneficial for our customer and how does technology help advance that. And we can do it.
It's a great point. And I think the other thing we forget is that for the most part, this issue is important to big consumer companies that have a lot of ad spend.
Of course.
Most businesses target very specific people in very specific ways, not through broad advertising programmatic decisions like this. So it's just funny how...
That's right.
Because, I mean, obviously, they're spending a lot of money on the Hill, on whatever, to do exactly what you're saying that they want to do. So, whatevs.
Yeah.
Go buy,
well, including
go buy
the
media
A&A,
from
right?
small.
Yeah.
Go support your small media company and content entrepreneur. Buy their sponsorships. That's what you should do.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is. Target the audiences that are targeting your companies, and do the work, and you'll be fine.
You know, it's fun. It reminds me of something. I read a book the other day. Actually, I think it was called Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. And his dad, this was in the 50s, his dad was a milkman. And there was a comment like, I can't believe that anyone would go to a store to get milk.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You know, when you think about it, you're like, I'm sure back then, it was like when this grocery store opened and you had to go get your milk at a store, you thought it was the craziest thing ever because it was delivered. So,
yeah.
Anyways. Crazy.
All right. What's up for you this week, my friend?
What is up for me this week? I have a lot on my, I've talked to you before the show. I'm selling sponsorships for Creator Economy Expo. It's like I'm back in 2011. It's nuts. But no, it's fun because I'm learning about companies I normally would have never known. Like the influencer company I talked to, I would have never talked to somebody about what they're going through, and it's really helped me kind of learn what's going on in the creator economy, or content entrepreneur economy, as you well put it. So, what do you have going on this week?
We're working on some deliverables for some clients, and I've got a new, speaking of influencer, I guess, I'm working with a new software company, and I'm working on a new show to help them launch a new sort of interesting show on content marketing and that sort of thing. So I've been working on that new show, and I'm excited about that. More on that in a couple of weeks as it gets launched. Just working. Scotch,
championship, football
Scotch,
championship weekend.
Football, exactly.
That will be interesting. So
that's
no Browns and no Cowboys,
right.
but what are you going to do?
Yeah, no Browns, no Cowboys. Go Bengals, go Rams.
Yeah, I'm actually starting to root for the Cleveland Cavs this year. They're going to make the playoffs. This is crazy.
Are you keeping up with all this hubbub about the Baseball Hall of Fame and all that stuff?
No, I'm not. I guess I should. Should I do this?
I don't know much about baseball at all. All I heard was that there was some controversy around the Baseball Hall of Fame and the number of people admitted. I guess only one person. Got.
I did hear that. I think this was the last year Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens would be on the list, and of course they were sort of blackballed, rightfully or not, for the whole roids thing. But
apparently that's the controversy.
Oh,
so, yeah,
got it. Yeah. Well, I have to pay better attention. You're starting to know more about my sports than I know. It's bothering me.
Yeah, I don't follow baseball that much at all. Anyway. All right, everybody. We are signing off, and in the meantime, remember, hashtag us up. Thank you, by the way, for all the story ideas through the hashtag #ThisOldMarketing on the Twitter, and also you can email us. And also, just to throw it out there, just know that at thisoldmarketing.site, and remember that's our wonderful little website, thisoldmarketing.site. There is that wonderful audio capability as well. You want to just speak at us or yell at us or whatever, go over there and leave us an audio message. That's kind of fun.
And if it's good enough, we can put it on the show. You never know.
If it's good enough, maybe you never know.
Never know.
You just never know. Until then, just remember, it's your story to tell. Tell it well. See you next week on This Old